This week's LC Sports Player of the Week is Jonathan Branch of the 5th and 6th grade Pirates division.
Arg.
Man, Corey Dugan is the coach of the ARG Pirates, and he nominated Jonathan this week for Jonathan's efforts. Let me tell you something about Jonathan Branch. I am so thankful that he won this award this week. That kid is good as gold, and he plays soccer, and he goes to camps, and he plays basketball. But when you watch him play basketball, he has grown so much over just the last year. And he plays hard-nosed defense now, and that's what Corey recognized in him this week, among some other things. But Jonathan Branch, great job. We're so proud of you. You are our LC Sports Player of the Week.
Yep, and this week's Coach of the Week goes to none other than the 5th and 6th grade coach, Mr. Jacob Ahart. Jacob Ahart, man, he's a stud. He doesn't have a kid in the league, but he has a heart of gold. And he comes out on practices and game days and gives his all. He's a great encourager. He loves the boys. He puts a plan into his practice, and he executes it on game day. So, Jacob, great job. You are this week's Coach of the Week, sponsored by Exquisite Lawns. Exquisite Irrigation and Landscaping is a full commercial and residential landscaping, irrigation, and lawn maintenance company serving all the DFW area. They're currently taking on new clients. So if you'd like more information on Exquisite Lawns, go to their website, exquisitelawns.com. That's XQUISTE, exquisitelawns.com. All right, welcome to episode 32 of Winning with the Home Team. I'm Katrina.
I'm Todd.
We're back here again after, I think, the 4th game day. Are we officially halfway through the season?
We are, yes, technically.
Okay. Yeah, I know that we have 3 more Saturdays. And this week we're having games as well.
Right.
So yeah, we finished up on Saturday. We're officially halfway through the season a little bit after this week. So Todd, what were your takeaways for this past game day?
We're in, I guess, what you would call the dog days of the season because the playoffs haven't started. But here's my biggest takeaway is this week was the first week that I've started getting just contacts from coaches. Hey, what are the standings?
Yeah.
Can you send them to me? The coaching was a little bit ramped up this week. You can tell that it's getting a little heavy now.
The honeymoon season is over.
Yeah.
The newness.
Right, yeah.
The newness is gone.
Yes, agreed.
Christmas is gone. New Year's is gone. Yeah, like you said, we're in the dog days. And, I think at the LC, it was a great day at the LC. You were at ABU.
I was at Oak Ridge.
Yeah, Charlie was at ABU.
Yeah.
I think that you have more male coaches.
Yeah, our topic today is
Toughness. Let's go.
Yeah.
Toughness.
It's a good segue because as I told you on Saturday, there's a lot of testosterone flying around.
Yeah.
As you get closer to the playoffs.
Yes.
And the coaching ramps up. Competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's to be expected. It's every year. We know it's coming. And it's not over the top. It's not like we're walking into something that we can't control.
Yeah.
Or, the coaches pretty much control themselves.
Yeah.
But they get a little more animated and heated on the sidelines. Yeah.
Can I tell you that this is a side note? I went to the Young junior high basketball game last night. It was Young versus Bowles.
Yeah.
If you're not from this area, that's just the 2 junior high schools that feed into the high school. So it was a rival, if you will, of teams.
Yeah.
And I think coming out of that gym last night, I think I've decided that I'm just going to buy Taya a clarinet, and we're just going to we're just going to do the band thing.
Yeah.
We're just going to do the band thing.
It's really for the best. It really is.
It really is for the best.
Yeah.
Clarinet. There's, I've yet to see at like a high school football game, one of the parents stand up and yell at the kid who's playing the clarinet that they're off tune or off beat or off whatever band.
I don't know. I mean, I did that at church this weekend. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's tough. Cy, my son, plays eighth grade basketball,
Yep.
and they have their first playoff game tonight. And you feel the tension levels rising when you get closer to that playoff type thing. And but you know what? Guilty. I mean, when I was playing, same thing. Even as a parent, it's just it means a little bit more, and you're getting closer to the end, and yeah. So it's tough. Did you watch any of the playoff games for the NFL this weekend?
No, I did not. I have resigned myself to women's college basketball.
Okay, yeah, that is.
So I watched a lot of college basketball.
You watched some North Carolina basketball this weekend?
Well, they lost, and that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
By 1 point at the buzzer beater. Florida State beat them. But I'm watching a lot of women's college basketball right now.
Okay, all right. Is it as what we're talking about here as far as how the intensity, is it the same?
Oh, I've got some comments.
Okay.
I've got some comments.
All right, I can't wait to hear.
So Todd, let's take it back 20 years ago. And
As a young man.
Yeah, and me too. If you were to ask, if I were to ask you 20 years ago, who is the toughest person you know?
Oh, 20 years ago.
Without the 20 years of life that you've lived.
Yeah.
Who do you think you would have said?
I know I would have said my dad.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
Does that still ring true?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. But for very different reasons.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years ago, I would have said my dad because he was a firefighter. He represented all the things that I thought toughness was.
Okay. Yeah. As a police officer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He, man, you all those things, like you don't quit, you go at it. You kill yourself every day to put food on the table.
Yeah.
Like you do whatever it takes. If there's a wall to run through, you run through that wall. Like that was what was modeled for me.
Yeah.
And so 20 years ago, that's what I would have said.
Yeah. I think if you would have asked me 20 years ago who the toughest person I thought was, it'd probably be like a marathon runner.
Yeah.
Someone who has run multiple marathons.
Yeah.
And has come out great. So that brings me to we'll talk about a lot of different aspects of toughness, but I think if you ask the average person what toughness is, I think that they'll answer what they value the most.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense because I'm in my head, I'm thinking about that, and yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So 20 years ago, I wanted to be in peak shape, right? Like I was training for a marathon 20 years ago, and I would have said that for sure.
Yeah, and that's changed now?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, how so?
Yeah. So when I think of toughness, I no longer think of of just the physicality that when you consider toughness being. I think that's an aspect of it, but I would probably consider toughness more of a mental, emotional, and a spiritual state.
Yeah.
Like looking at the whole person.
Yeah.
And I would even say, if you're mentally and emotionally and spiritually tough, then it's probably a good chance that you're also physically tough.
Yeah.
Or you have some physicality to it.
Yeah.
Agree.
I think 20 years ago, I probably blended the words tough and strong together and did not really understand all the nuances behind those words and what they truly mean. And so when I say 20 years later, would I still say the same person? Yes, but for very different reasons. You go through life and you learn and you have experiences, but more than anything else, you face adversity. And to me today, the toughest people that I think of are people that have been through the kind of adversity that brings you to your knees. And you have to, in a way, just survive that. And some people excel at picking themselves up off the mat.
Yeah.
And some people never get up.
Yeah.
And I have a soft spot in my heart for people that are knocked down, 8 times and get up 9. Right. Like I have a really, really soft spot for that. But I think it takes incredible not strength. There's an element of strength to that, but I think the toughness label is saved for people that just go through all kinds of stuff. And I have incredible I look at people that have been through the cancer battle, especially multiple times, and watch how they handle themselves and stay positive. And I question all the time, am I tough enough to do that?
Yep.
When if and when that happens to me, am I going to fold like a card table, or am I going to hit back? And it's tough. Tough.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think adverse conditions are the training ground for toughness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, for sure.
Yeah.
I would say probably, if you lump in the mental part of toughness and the emotional part of toughness and blend it in as the spiritual part of toughness, I would probably say right now, some of the toughest people that I know are those that are struggling through things, and they're also carrying the burdens of other people.
Yeah.
Like they got their own life going on,
right?
And they're trying to, they're trying to manage and balance what's going on, and they also have the burdens of other people's.
Yeah.
So, namely, I would say 3 people come to my mind. I would not consider myself tough, but I would consider Tommy Foster tough, Eric, our senior pastor, and Ed, because those guys take a lot of hits. They take a lot of hits physically. Ed's not a young gun anymore.
Yeah.
He's managing his health the best he can. Tommy, has been through, a kidney transplant, if you will. And then, Eric's trying to, get back to, jumping out of the gym again after his ATV accident. Right. And yet still they're managing families, even grandkids, some of them. And yet they all also are taking on the burdens of a lot of people at church.
Yeah.
And I think that that's tough. When I look at those guys, similarly to your cancer story, I'm like, man, could I handle all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I go back to, being a leader in different elements or different segments of my life in different places, a lot of male dominated arenas that I've been in, and, trying to figure out what is a leader of men, that's changed for me even over the course of my life. What does that look like? Because you go from, no, you're supposed to lead from the front and people will follow you. You're supposed to set the example. No, you're supposed to be a servant leader and, put those people first. And so you go through all of these different kind of philosophies of leadership. And, toughness is held in high regard in those male-dominated arenas, whether it be athletics or police work or you name it. But what always got me is no matter where it was, some of the toughest people that I knew would, you try to be a good leader to them, but they break down because of the adversity that they go through. Yeah. And so, it was taught to me a long time ago, and it always sticks with me that I spent most of my days with guys that would come to me that would close the door behind them and say, this is what I'm struggling with. And the amount of toughness that it takes to admit something that they're struggling with and deal with it, whether it be something going on at home or an addiction that they're struggling with or whatever it is. It takes incredible character to step forward and be honest about that. And so I learned very early on that I have to be able to be there to listen to them, but then also, like you're talking about, Ed or Eric or Tommy, they get bombarded on a daily basis, and that becomes, things that they have to struggle with is constantly being approached about other people's difficulties and shred it. And it is, to me, it is a toughness that you have to be able to deal with other people's issues and then move forward yourself. And
yeah. And
I have always been amazed at the amount of men that just struggle. There's. I was just looking at a shirt the other day that on the shirt it says, don't let the bad days win. Everybody struggles with something, and it's just how we handle that and how we manage that and move forward. And man, you were talking about you've got some things watching college women's college basketball. Going back through my life in those moments with those guys seated next to them when there's tears in their eyes, and talking about these are men that I've been to battle with, and some of the strongest, that what we would typically as a society call them tough men, just break down because of things that are happening at home or to themselves. And toughness is so much deeper than what you can do.
Yeah, for sure. Kim Caldwell, she is the new Tennessee women's coach. And she has been hailed as, this tough lady who is on fire for, Tennessee and college basketball. She's the first coach who Tennessee has hired outside of the family, if you will.
Yeah.
And they rave on her because she has a different offense. Like, she subs every 2 minutes. It doesn't matter what kids do. Like, they're subbing in and out all the time. Today is Tuesday. They played South Carolina last night, so Monday night. She had a baby last Monday.
Yeah.
And then was back at practice on Friday. And so she's being hailed as this, super tough person who just pops out a baby and gets back to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that's what we need to, celebrate her for.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that deserves celebrating.
Right.
You just had a kid on, like, not even 5 days after she returned to practice. Your body went through an amazing endeavor, and you've got a little boy at home. Like, I mean, okay, you came back to practice, and now you're at the South Carolina game, which probably is the biggest game that they'll play, in season.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not the definition of toughness. Granted, she coaches for Tennessee. She signed up for all this publicity, and who knows what she thinks in regards to that. But sorry, I don't think it's tough that she's back after 4 days of having a kid.
Yeah.
I think that is, I don't want to judge her, but I will.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm contemplating as you're talking. Because I think there is something to be said for having the willingness to, because you're right, she signed up for that job, and there's something to be said for, hey, I have a responsibility, I'm going to take care of my responsibility. But to what end, right? Like, what's your priority schedule?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe.
Can she do both? Yeah. I mean, I think she can.
Yeah.
But just all the pub about how Kim is such a great coach, and she's diehard, and she's, for her girls and all these things. Yes, and yes. But, like, can you also talk about her family for a second?
Yeah. For me, that in that scenario, what's tough would be the athletic director for that program saying, you're not coaching today.
Yes.
That would be tough.
Yeah.
That would be the person that I would look up to and admire, to say, you know what, we practice what we preach. If we talk about family first and that kind of thing, we appreciate you, but we're going to put you before we put our program.
Yeah.
And that would be, to me, that would be the example of toughness. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Yeah. And sports doesn't lend itself to that. I mean, at all. Right? Like, I mean, toughness is based on your ability to endure and win a game. Right. And so, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was my example.
Yeah.
And, you even have Kim Mulkey. Tennessee played LSU, I think it was a week and a half ago, and Kim Mulkey goes and brings her a baby gift. And, Kim Mulkey also brought another coach a baby gift. And everyone's hailing Kim Mulkey as this, super generous and kind person. And maybe she is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the bench says otherwise.
We've been down that road before. But and I'll give you another one that I was watching the Chiefs game this weekend.
Uh-huh.
And
they're in the Super Bowl, right?
They're in the Super Bowl.
I do know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're playing the AFC Championship game, and I'm watching Travis Kelce, who is
T Swift.
he's a
T
Swiftie.
Swift.
Probably, and I had to clarify this when I was talking to my family about this, because Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, I'm sure great guys. Like, I don't know them from Adam. I can't really say. But what I did see is, Travis Kelce goes into the end zone, taunts a guy, the guy retaliates, and Travis Kelce flops, and okay, it's gamesmanship. I get it, whatever, but it's not impressive to me, like same thing with Patrick Mahomes, who goes up there after the game, and the first thing out of his mouth is, I just want to, I mean this, like, thank Jesus for the opportunity. And we've talked about this stuff before too. And then you go to another clip, and every other word is a cuss word. He's acting like a child, and it's just, oh man, it just drives me crazy, because I think about toughness and kids that watch the game of football, and they equate that with toughness.
For sure.
And that is what the images that they're seeing. And so they just think, oh, okay, well, I can be tough and act like this.
Yeah.
And man, I have so much respect for those guys that have the humility that you just don't hear from them very much. They go out there and they do their job. Yeah. And there's countless amount of guys that are like that. And again, I'm not bashing, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure they're great guys, but I'm just saying, as far as what is being shown as toughness to our youth, man, I just wish there was more of those guys that carry themselves with class, and I hate that.
Yeah. I think that we've said this over and over again, but essentially we're saying that toughness is not based on physicality. It's based on your character.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what we want to see in sports, not, that you can pop out a baby and be at practice 5 days later.
Right.
But,
right.
But to your point, the AD telling, Kim Caldwell, hey, why don't you just take some more time?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, here's a question for you.
Okay.
How do you think parents stunt their child's growth and development in toughness? Like, if we've said that that toughness is built through adverse situations, you're not gonna build your tough muscles, on a bed of roses.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're gonna have to go through some things.
Right.
As parents, as I'm raising Taya, Todd, what are some things that well, let's just change the question. What are some things that I can do to make sure that Taya grows up as a tough young lady as far as her character? Because we're going to practice basketball.
Yeah.
Or maybe the clarinet.
The clarinet. Yeah.
Maybe the clarinet now.
So here's what I've learned, and through my experience, is parents, stop bailing your kids out. Stop living their life for them. It was never meant for your role to be the person who's there to make excuses for them or take up for them in ways that they should be handling on their own. Man, I've seen that and learned that the hard way over and over. Yeah. We so much these days, we fail to see what accountability looks like for our kids. And you stunt that when you step up and give them excuses, built-in excuses. And so whatever that looks like in whatever field, kids need to have the opportunity and the room to grow. And how do you grow? You make mistakes, you fail, and you move on. Am I saying that you can't be there to pick your kid up when he falls? Absolutely not. You should be. That you're a parent. But what you can't do is hold him up through the path of life and make sure that he doesn't fall at all. He or she, I just, the hardest thing in the world is letting go, right? From the time that I'm teaching my kids to ride a bike and I have to let go, I know they're going to fall. Yeah. I know that there's a Band-Aid in our immediate future, right? And I know they're going to cry. But that is a lesson they have to learn on their own. And it's so much more magnified as the older that they get. When they become teenagers, the first time that they drive out of the driveway in the car, and that's a 2,000-pound vehicle that they're, sending down the roadway with them in it. When they're going to a party, when they go on their first date, there's so many times when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm crossing my fingers. When my kid goes off to college and he has to make good choices and decisions and I'm not there to protect him.
Yeah.
Man, like those are hard moments. Many a night my wife has sat up and refused to go to bed until our child came home. And not me. I'm asleep pretty quickly. But no, it's just so many times you see this. My wife works in education, and she sees this a lot where seemingly today there are just a lot of parents that are going to make excuses for behavior rather than looking their child in the eye and saying, why did you do this? And correcting the behavior so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So I think from a toughness standpoint, you want your child to be successful and learn how to be tough and take on adversity as they go through life. They're never going to handle adversity if they don't have to go through it themselves. So stop doing it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think back to, several of the teams that we have in our league, the older divisions, 4th grade, 5th and 6th grade, boys and girls. We do all that we can. We put all kind of rules into effect as far as evaluations and draft rules and all these things to make sure that we do what we can to make sure that teams are drafted evenly. But every single year, without fail, we have a team that just has a losing season.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Like there's no perfect system to defining teams. Like, if you want to go and play rec ball and try out, the field house or other places, more power to you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to find a more, evenly matched league.
Right.
But inevitably there are some teams that have yet to win a game.
Yeah.
And yet there's so much to learn, even if you have a losing season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if coaches would lean into that, and just pause for a second, take off the hat of their pride and their ego, and say, okay, here's what I have. Here's what's going on. What kind of lessons can we get these kids to learn and to buy into, truly buy into? Not just pat them on the head and say, hey, we're doing a good job. But really, set some expectations and set some realistic goals and watch them meet that.
Right.
It doesn't mean that, a goal should be win a game, but it should be improving every single season.
Yeah.
And yet too, our lives don't always win as far as the outcomes, right? And so we know that sports is a training ground for life, yet still when we're down in the ditch, I say we, parents, coaches are down in the ditch because their kid hasn't won a game yet, we seem to forget that. And there's tremendous opportunity for lessons to be learned. We just got to get there.
Yeah. What you're talking about is a level of vulnerability that we are uncomfortable with. And so parents, coaches, listen to me for a second, because I believe very strongly in this. I was watching something the other day about just a leadership principle. And it talks about how as coaches or even as parents, when our kids or our team is not behaving the right way or doing the right things, we tend to go to them and say, hey, this is how you're going to do it. We're not doing it well. We're going to do it this way and blah, 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 blah. And if you take that, because that's the way that we've been conditioned as parents or coaches, whatever, if you take that and flip it on its head and instead go to that child or your player and you say, hey, what do you think? Are we good enough right now to handle this coming week's game the way that we're playing, and let them buy into it? That they're going to say, no, we're not. We're not. And then you have their ear and you can walk them through what's going on. But it takes a level of vulnerability to be able to do that, because we get so caught up in the toughness part of, I'm in charge. I'm going to tell you how we're going to do this. You're not good enough. I'm going to scream and yell at you until we get it right. And there's no buy-in on the other end, right? And so what I was watching is, it's a special forces group, and they're training over and over and over because, at some point their lives are going to be on the line. And the simply ask is, hey, if we face the hardest thing in our life tomorrow, are we ready for that? Mm-hmm. And the leadership component there is just, it's buy-in, right? And it's no different for us as coaches or as parents. You have to be able to be vulnerable with your kids as a parent and say, these are the things that I messed up. How can you learn, mm-hmm. right? And the level of love that I have felt personally with my kids increases exponentially when I'm willing to sit down with them and not expect them to, hey, you got to fight through this. You got to get through this. What are you doing? It's not that. It's, hey, some choices were made here that were probably wrong. Let me tell you all the stuff that I've done similar to this. This is what I learned. How can you incorporate this and learn from what you've just done? Those kinds of things. And at the end of those conversations, it typically ends either in tears or a hug or something. But what it does is it creates trust. Yeah. And as a coach, I've had to do that. I just had to have a conversation with one of my players last week. There were some behavior issues, and I went to him and I said, hey, you know the rules, so let's talk about what happened. Tell me what happened. He talked about it, and I said, what is it that I should do to you? And he's like, Coach, I shouldn't play the next game. Okay, do you think that's fair? Yes, I think it's fair. All right. And so we walk through that, and at the end of it, that kid is bought in completely. But if I just go to that kid and I'm like, this is what you did, you're sitting for the next game or two games, then there's animosity and all this kind of stuff. And so we just have to flip what we view as toughness on its head and say, is it really tough to look like you're tough? Or is it really tough to be able to go deeper with people?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you said that I want to capitalize on for sure. When you take that route, when when a coach is pointing his finger or raising his voice or her voice at the kid, one of the things that you are immediately doing is you're creating shame.
Yeah.
You're creating shame in a kid because, if you've spent time with kids at practice, and things are improving, and then you get out there on the basketball court and you yell at a kid, immediately that trust is broken.
Absolutely.
Similar to what you said.
Yeah, right? I have never been able to perform out of fear.
No, I don't know that anybody has really. I mean, once you have that fear-based and shame-based feelings, it cripples you to be able to perform at your highest level.
Right.
And two, for coaches to realize that, it really is, they need to take themselves out of what they are perceiving as, as their identity as a coach and how this affects them, wins or losses, or, if they don't run this play this way, then that means that I'm not a good coach or I've not done something right. That may be true. That may be true for sure. But still, take that hat off and look at it through the lens of your kids.
Right.
I mean, if you really want to get through your kids.
Yeah.
So I think if coaches would realize that yelling at their kids only creates, fear and shame, I think that would move wonders.
And what do we see week after week in our league? Coaches absolutely berating kids sometimes.
Not in all of our teams.
No. I'm saying from week to week we see that though.
Yeah.
And
we see how a kid's performance is perfected by it. Yes. You can see their play. You can see their face.
Yes.
You can see their face while they're on the court, when they're on the bench.
Right.
All of it. And it doesn't produce results.
Yeah.
And it doesn't produce the type of character that we're wanting to develop in our kids.
What's funny about that is we talk about that, but the other side of that is we see examples the other way in our league of coaches that don't do that. And what always amazes me is those coaches that coach, the right way, so to speak, or whatever, that don't yell at their kids, that are calm, that take it in stride and have those conversations with their players or whatever. It always amazes me that when I talk to those coaches, I hear about all the places they've been and all the things that they've done and how successful they are. And you would never know all the things that have been accomplished. and all the successes that they've had in their life. And you just walk away from those conversations going, that's why.
Yeah.
You know, he or she handles themselves under control. They're able to think on the fly. They're able to treat people with respect and dignity.
Yeah.
You know, like talk about toughness.
Yep.
You know, that's the goal. So.
Yeah, I think one of the definitions that we can attribute toughness to is just a genuine understanding of people.
Yeah.
And how to respond, you know, based on a relationship that you have with certain people.
Right.
You know, yeah, I think that's crucial for sure.
Yeah. I want people, this is what I want for my kids is, and I tell them this, that people need to know that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get something done, right? Whatever it takes. And that includes physically, right? People need to be able to see that in you, but that doesn't mean that you have to go to that limit every single time, right? You need to know the difference between, okay, now I need to go to this level versus where can I fit on the spectrum? And so these coaches that we talk about that have the seeming, you know, control or self-control, does that mean they don't ever yell? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
It means they generally know when the time is right and when it's not. They don't ever just verbally abuse players, but there's a time and place on the court to get people's attention.
Yeah.
But that's a whole lot different than yelling at your players because they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and I think too, if you look at the coaches, you know, that we're talking about that do things, you know, what you said, quote unquote, the right way, the majority of them, you know, that they have a strength that's beyond themselves.
Yeah,
you know? and that's a relationship with the Lord, right? Like we know that their identity is found in God, who is the ultimate giver of strength. You know, and toughness, if you will.
Right.
And that's the difference maker. People that understand that their identity is not based in wins or losses, or you know, or how well they can parent their kid through school, or through, you know, a mean girl situation, or through a losing season. But it's those that really put their trust in the Lord, that go to the Lord for guidance, and just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait for the Lord to reply.
Right.
And it could be his reply will be through you, through wisdom to your kid. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, we have to bring it back to our relationship with God, you know, and what this podcast is all about is winning with the home team. And if we're not gaining our strength and our wisdom from the Lord, our toughness can only be surface level deep.
Yeah. I don't remember if you and I were talking about this or it was somebody else, but we were talking about when people get to the age of 70, 80 years old and people that have that personal relationship with Christ, they always seem to just have that calmness about them. Like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready.
Doesn't faze me.
Doesn't faze me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about in terms of like if I were training, the times when you go into the most critical situations, you don't think too much about, you know, oh my gosh, what if this happens and you know, we fail at this mission, or, you know, the worst happens, or what. You don't really think in those terms because you have prepared yourself in training so much. But take that to a higher level when, like, I don't have to do anything because Christ already has.
Yeah.
I've already won.
Yeah.
And so there's that level of, you know, being able to give it away and surrender that brings you a kind of peace that I look at a 75-year-old man who walks around giving candy to the grandkids and I'm like, man, that's who I want to be.
Yeah.
You know, talk about tough. Like that guy's been through life.
Yeah.
And is smiling and upright, and like that, to me, that's toughness.
Yeah.
And why is that tough? Because you get to the point where you realize I'm good because I can't.
Yeah.
I give it to the one who can.
Yeah. So in training for toughness, I mean, I think the only word of encouragement is to seek the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what we are constantly talking about on this podcast, what you have constantly said about starting your day, you know, in Scripture.
Yeah.
You know, apart from spending time with our Maker and with our Creator and with the one who sees, you know, our adverse conditions or the conditions in which we don't like, He's the only one that can guide us.
Yeah.
And it's through relationship with him that he's able to give us the toughness that we need, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, or probably all three together in a circumstance.
Yeah.
He's the one that can get us through.
Right.
Whether you're a coach who does not have any kids, or whether you're a parent that has a 5-year-old or a parent that has 5 kids, the Lord knows and he can guide us.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. And I would add this, don't we fall into this trap of comparison with our kids? And there's no need to compare. There's no need. We have to get our kids out of that thinking, because when we turn it over to God the way that we should, when we model what toughness looks like, and I saw this the other day too, we tend to think of Jesus as this weak person in our society, and he is anything but.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to explain to our children, listen, this is why Jesus was strong. He stood up against people that nobody else would.
Yeah.
Physically, he took the toll.
Yep.
He was as strong as a man could be, and yet we try to portray him in our society as somebody who is just this, he's all about love, which he is, but there's so much more to that.
Yeah.
So much more to that. And so let's not compare ourselves to other people and other kids and all that kind of stuff. You want to compare yourself to somebody, there's really the only thing you can do is give it away to him, because he is the toughest person that will. You say it all the time when we do our devotions and camps and things.
Yeah.
He is the toughest person that ever walked this earth.
Yeah.
So let's go there for our model.
Yep, for sure. Well, thanks for listening in on Winning with the Home Team about toughness. Hey, if you haven't checked out our latest episodes, go back and take a look. We're all about how to grow people and how to grow families so that they're giving their best, specifically through their relationship with the Lord. So thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next time. Man, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed hearing us ramble about youth sports or other strangely interesting sports topics related to families, please go and like and subscribe to the show so that you can get regular updates when a new podcast is released. We'd also love to connect with you. Head on over to our socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We're under LC Sports and Recreation.
And if you're new to our podcast, go check out some of our previous episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. There's some good stuff on there. And pay attention, because these come out pretty quickly, weekly, as a matter of fact. And you're going to learn a lot about what we have to say with regards to our league and how to win with the home team.